helping in my day-to-day life, I was also putting in jeopardy by knowingly having a pattern of behavior that enabled and assisted a person who was funneling mountains of narcotics into my community at the same time. So my victims were the people whose homes get broken into because people are out here trying to feed an addiction. My victims were the loved ones of those who choose to do drugs and subsequently die. And now you have a family mourning a loved one and paying for a funeral and these kind of things. So even though my actions at the time were not thinking like, oh, I don't care about my community, or, oh, let this family suffer, or let this person, whatever. That wasn't my thought process, but really I have victims. And so I also apologized to my community, and I apologized to all those who were impacted by the drug epidemic in my community, because I had, by my own complacency, been of assistance in drugs funneling into my community. And I fully understand the harm that does. And I personalize my victims to my judge by saying, the facts of, I have several cousins who are drug addicts. I have an uncle who we had to bury because he was a drug addict. So I personally know firsthand the suffrage that comes from drugs within the community and drug use in the community. And I had still chose to turn a blind eye to my part in that, during that time. And I think my judge really respected that a lot. I think he really, and I try to do some restorative justice before I went to prison. That's something I always advocate for people to do too, and make sure it's mentioned in your PSI. And don't mention that your allocution, but make sure it's in your PSI. I volunteered more in my community. I tried to be an overwhelmingly positive contributor into my community to try to mitigate some of the negative that I have been part of.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Thank you. That's accountability, guys. That's accountability.
But you can say you're sorry all day, but we all know the old saying, if someone says they're sorry, but their behaviors stay the same, that's not an apology. It's a manipulation. And so definitely before you give allocution and you fall on your sword, try to do some restorative justice. Find a way and make sure, now you don't mention it, but make sure your lawyer mentions, hey, this person, they did something wrong. They're taking responsibility. They know they have consequences, but they are truly remorseful for what they've done. And they've even taken steps and done things to try to mitigate the harm that they've caused.
And actions speak louder than words. I did once a week at a food bank. I fed the homeless every Friday night in a van. We went around and handed out sack lunches and sleeping bags and stuff. Alcoholics Anonymous, they had an office. I cleaned their bathrooms every Friday, right? I did stuff like that.
And that's my awesome.
Lawyer, like you said, I had my lawyer say it, not me. Well, Judge,
you don't say
I did that. Let your lawyer speak for you. She's
right, and you just fall on your sword. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And let your lawyer say she's sorry and this is what she's doing to try to right her wrongs.
One of the big things when it comes time for doing your allocution versus like your narrative, people will start regurgitating the information that was in their narrative to begin with.
Right.
So we work with our clients in their allocutions, and obviously we give them bullet points of what should go into it. And then they send it over to us on what they want to say. And they're also, the problem I found, even for myself, is unless you're a professional speech giver or you're an actor and you're used to speaking to audiences, the audience you're going to be speaking to is going to be in this jaw-dropping courtroom where you're going to just start mumbling, you forget what you're going to say, you start snotting up and crying. So we work with our clients in aspects of, we get them to go to things like open mic night, practice saying their allocution in front of a live audience, get the marbles out of your mouth. And it's okay to hold the piece of paper while you're reading. But to kind of piggyback on what you said, the accountability factor, a lot of times people think they're in a victimless crime and, well, I don't have any victims. Well, you're leaving behind children, you're leaving behind a wife,
absolutely,
or a husband, and having those individuals identify themselves as your victims, even in the character reference letter. The personal narrative, the big thing is also you'll get people that turn in 20, 30 letters. And I just think it's too many,
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, you're making the judge work now.
And if you think about it, usually the letters are being turned in with what's called your sentencing memorandum, which is something your attorney is going to prepare. They're going to file their sentencing memo, and then you're going to have your sentencing memo. And that's usually when your narrative and your reference letters are submitted. So having 2 to 3, maybe 4 character reference letters that are on point and actually reviewing those, not just having your friends and family write letters and not read it and send it in. We have a free consulting where we can go through your letters with you, but not everybody can hire a consultant. The personal narrative, guys, if you're early on in your case, you really want to get your attorney on the mindset of submitting your personal narrative at the time of the pre-sentence interview during the preliminary report, because for those of you that don't know what takes place in a pre-sentence interview, this is after you've taken a plea deal or after you've gone to trial and lost. You're going to sit down with U.S. probation, and typically the interview is only 30 minutes to maybe an hour, where probation is going to ask you a bunch of yes and no questions to understand your entire life. And then they're going to take those basic yes or no answers, and they're going to create your life history based on that, where the government is going to submit terabytes worth of information why you're Satan's best friend. If you want to have a shot at getting,
they can even pull up your juvenile record, right, Dan?
Well, it's not that they can, they will. It's not going to be used against you.
There you go.
But it's not going to hurt you on your points. It's not going to go against your criminal history.
It's an argument that they use against you.
They can use it as this is something along the lines. Having your personal narrative submitted to the probation officer can be very valuable, because it's going to give the probation officer much more information about who you are. Almost every client that we do that with, that we have the personal narrative submitted at the time of the pre-sentence interview, almost every single time probation will make the same statement, I wish every defendant came in this prepared. Now, not to take up too much time on here, because I know Katie's going through this, so this is going to be something Katie's going to be facing at some point. Your attorney is probably going to squawk at this idea. When you tell your attorney, I want to give my personal narrative to U.S. probation, they're going to tell you they don't need to see it. They don't want to see it. We can't do that. All kinds of basically C blocking. And the reality is, it's probably because your attorney hasn't taken a deep dive into what's in your narrative, because they don't honestly think it's going to matter. They don't think it's make a change. But I'll tell you, if you take control and realize that your attorney works for you, that you're the one that's going to go to prison, not your attorney, and if you hold your attorney to a higher standard, making them frustrated, asking them the questions until you get the answers, getting your narrative submitted to that probation report, not only is going to give more information, but it's guaranteeing that the judge is going to read it. Because if the judge doesn't read anything else, the one fucking thing that judge is going to, excuse my French, guys, the one thing the judge is going to read is the pre-sentence report. And if your narrative is in there, there's even an interview from Michael Santos where he interviewed a federal judge, and the federal judge said, I've never seen that before, but I think it's a great idea because A, the information is getting to them in a timely manner, and B, it shows that the defendant isn't lazy in submitting a letter like the day before sentencing. So these are all things that you could be doing, that when we talk about mitigating outside the circumstances, these are the things that can give a judge the ability to want to go below guidelines. Every single person in this chat room right now that's been sentenced, when that judge walks in the room, he's already got a pretty good idea of what he's going to give you. He's already got it written down. He's already heard the arguments from paper, from the pre-sentence report, from the state, or from the government. So he's come in there already kind of with his mind made up. This is your opportunity to give your allocution and to give the judge a reason to reconsider what type of sentence they should give you. We see people getting probation or highly reduced sentences where the judge said, I was prepared to give you this today, but after reading this, after hearing what you had to say, after seeing your level of accountability beyond the average person, I don't think that a long prison sentence is what needs to happen here. I think that you've actually learned a mistake. So you have to really take heed to what's going on here, because this isn't just for us to get up here and spew hot air to you guys.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say that's sentencing day is probably the most important day of your life, other than maybe getting married or your funeral. This day you will never ever forget, and you're not going to get a second chance to say what you wanted to say or not say, or all these things Dan is talking about. This is the most important day of the rest of your life, as far as I'm concerned, other than maybe getting married or something like that. But you'll never forget your sentence day. Even Raymond knows the day he got sentenced. He remembers, and he didn't get that long of a sentence, but I know he'll never forget that day, guys. So this is very, very important. Listen to everything Dan said.
90 seconds tops, Katie. I just wanted to make sure Katie got that answer. 90 seconds top should be your allocution.
I was going to say 5 minutes, but 90 seconds, really? Okay.
See, I kind of feel like, and shoot for the 3-minute bracket and practice saying it and time yourself and do this looking in a mirror, making eye contact. And you want to try to make as much eye contact as possible. You do not want to fidget. Any nervousness that makes you want to fidget, wiggle your toes in your shoes. Nobody sees that. And there's of course a lot of other things about how you dress and whatever that are very minute things that add up to a big picture. But piggybacking off Dan here, I completely agree with everything he said. And I will say that I tell people your personal narrative is who are you outside of your crime and who were you during the time of your crime? What is your backstory and what were the circumstances when you committed your crime? While being very careful to walk a fine line to not seem as though you're excusing your behavior. But the definitely allocution is a fall on your sword moment. It doesn't matter that your daddy beat you and the neighbor touched you and, whatever, you had a boyfriend who was, intimidating you when you committed your crime. None of that matters at allocution, but that does matter in your personal narrative. And like Dan said, you want to get that to your judge and to probation prior to the PSI. That way your PSI reflects your personal narrative. It's almost like you're giving probation kind of parameters to move their line of questioning through, which will greatly benefit your judge seeing you as an individual in the long run.
Thank you. Can I ask Raymond, can you tell us about your sentencing day, Raymond? I know you didn't get a lot of time, but do you remember what you said to the judge?
So it's actually one of the worst day I ever thought of. You feel, your spirit leaves you when you are told that you are going to jail. Yeah. So it was really, really challenging when that happened to me. Even though the time were very short, I had 3 days there, but the stigma that is scary. By being incarcerated, it's most especially in Africa, is a huge one. People are people feel terrified, identifying with you as someone who is, involved with crime, So it's a very huge thing when it comes to the way we Africans look at, the criminal justice system. It's not unlike the US. Your population almost maybe 60 to 50% of your experience the issue of incarceration, but not as compared to that of the African. Even though our criminal, our prison system is absolutely very bad, not as compared to yours, but it carries a very huge stigma. Yeah.
So there's certainly a huge stigma here in the States as well. Yeah. But our media promotes that.
Right.
Yeah, there's nothing scarier than getting my girlfriend got sentenced before I did by several weeks, and she was the low man on the totem pole. Like everybody in our indictment, there was 13 of us in our indictment. We all thought for sure Shelley was getting probation. And when the judge gave Shelley 13 months, the rest of us were like, oh my God, we're all getting the electric chair. It was there's nothing scarier. I'm not going to lie. I had suicidal thoughts. I didn't know what to tell my kids. Matter of fact, I would lie to my children and tell them that I was a victim, that the government's out to get me, that I'm going to go to prison because I can't afford a pricey attorney. And it wasn't until after prison that I came home and came clean with my kids. And they were pretty pissed because they were like, we defended you. We told people you didn't do this. And it's very common for us to not want to appear different in our children's eyes than the superhero that they've envisioned. But if your object and goal in life as a parent is to protect your kids and to put them in a better situation than what they're in, giving them an unrealistic, irrational fear of law enforcement, things of this nature, because now they just think everybody's out to get them. So you're not doing your kids any favors by minimizing your role and your actions in what led you into the situation that got you to this point.
Dan, that reminds me of a question that comes up a lot when I talk to people. At what age should you tell your children the truth? Now, they're going to hear it at school. If you don't tell them, who knows? Is it 5? Is it 10 years old? Do you even want to tell them the truth? So let me ask you guys that one.
In my opinion, and you guys can chime in, it's relevant to the mindset and the child's understanding and able to compute thoughts. If you've got a 5-year-old, 6-year-old that's like super with it and they're asking very intelligent questions, then sure. But if you've got a kid that doesn't comprehend what's going on, you're better off telling them, you know, I'm going to go into timeout. You know, daddy did the same thing when you do what you're not told to do and you get sent to your room, or, you know, you get a smack on the butt or whatever it might be. You got to explain it to them at a level that they can understand. My kids were definitely old enough to understand. And I met people in prison that even while they were when they would go to visitation, they would convince their kids that they were at like a military camp.
Yeah.
You know, or daddy's going to go away for work for a year and a half.
I'm going to work for the government for 12 cents an hour. Yeah.
Yep. And then they get on the phone and they're talking to you, and this call's from a federal inmate. You know, that recording that comes on periodically. So there's going to be zero benefit from lying to them, because you're not doing it for them. You're ultimately doing it for you. We ask our clients the question, would you ever do anything to hurt your children? Oh, of course not. Of course not. And well, you're going to prison. You broke the law. You're now leaving them and you're hurting your family. You know, a lot of the men that we deal with think while they're in prison, they're still going to run things. Oh, I'm going to.
Yeah, I hear them on the phone all the time, running that household.
And they're just not. You've got these women that have lived a certain life, and the women are terrified too. But these women find out real quick that they're stronger than they thought, and they find an inner power to the point where when my clients get out, the relationships are usually stronger. And now the spouse is involved with finances, writing checks, knows what the day-to-day is. Like, they're never going to have the wool pulled over their head again.
Yeah, so, your role has been replaced while you're doing time.
Yeah, they're the mother and the father and the housekeeper and the bill maker, and you know, running you're in prison. You can't control your life on the outside while you're behind bars on a 15-minute phone call once every other couple of days. It's just impossible.
Yeah. And I definitely, you know, when my door got kicked in, I had a teenager and a toddler, so two very different mind age frames, you know. And now I have a 20-year-old and a 6-year-old. But, you know, definitely at the time, me and the teenager had a very honest, age-appropriate conversation. You know, with the toddler going in, I explained to him a couple months ahead of time that mommy was going to go away for a little while. I love you. I will call you and be able to talk to you on the phone. I may be able to have some video visits with you. And I said, you know, it's like when we get on, you know, on Facebook and talk to this person or that person. I said, you know, but mommy's going to be gone for a while. Mommy got in trouble. And so now mommy has to go away. Mommy has to go to grown-up timeout, you know, is what my youngest one was told. And he didn't really, all the different moving parts of my situation were way too complex for his age group. So we had watched an episode of Bubble Guppies where the officer pulls over a speeder, you know. And I knew that was something he understood. So I said, remember that time I got a speeding ticket, which ironically I got a speeding ticket. And he said, yeah. And I said, remember the Bubble Guppies, you know, arrested the person and put him in timeout in jail for a while? And he said, yeah. I said, well, that's what's happening to mommy. You know, I'm going to be in jail for a while and I'm going to be in timeout. And, you know, and if you asked him today, he'd probably say, yeah, my mom got a speeding ticket. So she had to go to prison, to grown up timeout. You ask my 20-year-old, she can, you know, she was at my sentencing. She was at my plea hearing. She can tell you blow by blow, you know, so much information. And because she was at an age where she could understand that. And, you know, our kids are not oblivious to what's going on. You know, if daddy or mommy has mountains of cash and no 9 to 5, particularly if they're over, you know, 11, 12 years old, they're definitely, at least to some degree, at least subconsciously aware that something abnormal is happening. And I think that addressing that and minimizing their confusion, giving them as much age appropriate clarity as possible is really something that has to be a focal point. And, you know, I was in prison, you know, I was very, with the teenager, you know, I let her know, you know, I'm trying to get these FSAs back and I'm trying to get cares and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, because I wanted her to see that I didn't just go to prison and go, oh, and I get to kick my feet up and not be a parent. You know, I would, you know, help with various life issues. You know, I was fortunate enough to be able to send a couple dollars home, you know, here and there and help out with things while I was incarcerated. And, you know, but, you know, one of the hardest things, and I remember seeing this from another YouTuber, I don't remember which one before I went to prison, but they said one of the most difficult struggles for the newly incarcerated is realizing that the influence and power you had in life as a spouse, as a parent, as a caretaker, all that is stripped from you when you go to prison. And so you have to hand over those reins to someone else and really just trust that they're going to do the right thing and support them. Even if I don't agree with 100% of the way my son was parented in my absence, but at the end of the day, he wasn't abused or neglected. And when I came home, he was a well-adjusted kid. So I can be nothing but humble and grateful and just shut up and take it on the chin. It is what it is. You know what I mean? And now that I'm fresh home, I've been home less than 3 months. It's really interesting reintegrating my position in life as a caretaker for my elderly mother, as someone who assists their brother, someone who assists their adult daughter, and as a single parent to my 6-year-old. You can't just come home and snatch back the reins. You have to really kind of integrate yourself into these roles, or you're going to overwhelm yourself and really overwhelm your loved ones with the dramatic change. And I think that's a whole thing, a whole process in and of itself that we have to go through this, especially women.
Audrey, that's so much growth I hear from you right now. Because, guys, we had this conversation before you went into prison, and even while you were in prison when you called me. You have grown. Wow, that's growth, guys. That's growth. That's not what you said 2 years ago to me. I love it.
Oh, absolutely. And when you're in prison and someone says, "Hey, I let little Tommy, have ice cream and stay up till 11 o'clock at night because he didn't have school tomorrow," and hey, I was tired, it was easy. You want to come through the phone and go, "Are you insane? This is his bedtime. This is his routine, and not too much dairy." But you have to just shut up and say, "Okay, that's great. How'd he do? Did he sleep okay? Good to know," and move on, because it's not your show no more. It's not, and you have to really come to terms with that, preferably before you go in. Realize that that's going to be your reality.
Yeah. Now, Raymond, you have what, 5 kids or 4? But what did you tell your children?
So I didn't tell them anything. It just happened. I knew I was going for a shorter time, so it was just like something.
It was a short time. So
yeah. So I didn't tell them anything. But actually, what terrifies me or make the entire stuff look scary is because of the stories that are told, by people that have experienced or had that experience, with prison in our country. So you're going to know you are definitely going into a hell. First of all, you won't have sufficient food to eat. You won't have a proper place to lie down. You're going to be overcrowded. A room that is meant for 1 or 2 people may be hosting 8 to 10 people. So you know that definitely you have to be sleeping in shade. You have to wait your fellow sleep, and then he awake, and then you go to bed. So there's a lot of things that are surrounding it that brings out that fear, because the experience you're going to have. If you are sick there, imagine there's no medication and you are sick, and you're going to be there like that. So it's a very horrible situation. So I didn't tell my kids anything, but my wife knew that I was going into this, and because the time was short, so we just left it like that. But now that they have grown up, they are aware of what I went through, and I told them the story. And it's because I don't want them to get involved with what I did.
But now you also have all kinds of people coming out of prison at your at the office, what is it? What do you have? We have a building now. You have all these classes, workshops. Raymond's going above and beyond, helping his own people that come out of prison and the families left behind. He's doing a lot for his community. He really is. Even though he did a short time in prison, it woke you up, I think, Raymond.
Yeah, so like you rightly stated, I'm working with a lot of people, most especially family, that are impacted by the criminal justice system. And what we are doing is so unique, and it's empowering parents, empowering people that are coming out of prison, because we are giving a skill set that will help mitigate, the issue of getting involved with crime. Holistically, what causes many of them to go to jail is because of food. A lot of them want to eat, and they can't afford, getting food because they do not have jobs, and they do not have the skill set that will help to enhance their life. So we are there to see how we can counsel them, and not just counseling, but we also provide life skills that can help mitigate these issues. Like, currently I run a computer program that I train adults, and youth, in computer literacy, so that they can have the skill that they can, it could be, something that will create employability for them, create a source of income, create the means that they can generate something the end of time to cater to their family. And one of the challenging things that lead many of us to jail or prison is because of the adverse experience we have as children. The war that lasted for 14 years is one of the key factors that is causing most of these issues that are happening within our country. And we are working with those people to see how we can help prepare them so that they can become productive.
That's amazing, my man. That's God's work you're doing over there. God bless you.
He really is. And, I didn't want to really use this channel for this, but Raymond needs computers, guys. If you have a used computer sitting around, an extra one you guys don't use for his, if you could send it to him. And his link's down below, or call me, my number. I'll hook you up. And if you just got one, dig it over to the post office and mail it over to Liberia. They could really, really use it, guys. A used one. They don't mind. Just something that you're not using, okay? I'm not trying to push for money, or it's not a drive. And
everybody like get out there and get a brand new MacBook and let's drop it in the mail.
You could do that too. He'd appreciate that, but even a used one would help.
Right.
It would go a long way, guys. And I can give you the tax write-off form from Wings for Life, so you can write it off and you put in the amount. We don't, okay? If you want to go that route.
You should put a little description in the link, or a link in the description after this of where people can send that to.
I will. I thank you, and I will. I got to redo the whole description thing. Me and Dan were talking earlier. What is that? When a man that's in a rush takes shortcuts, and I took shortcuts, guys. So I need to go redo my description. And last but not least, Angie. But then I wanted to end on a last question. Me and Angie have a question about. We brought up. Remember, Angie, about the guards at prisons wearing body cams.
Yes.
We'll get into all that. But Angie, the last question about telling your children about your case and going to prison.
Well, my son is an adult, and he's been an adult the whole time since I got in trouble. But it was difficult to tell him because he's an only child, and I knew it was going to be a huge disappointment to him. Plus, he's in the military. So actually, I told his wife first, and then I told him. Like a day later, I told him, and he was shocked. He was just shocked, like. I think he almost laughed because he just couldn't believe his mom would even be wrapped up in such a thing. And then I think once it hit him, he got kind of mad. And I was so obsessed, because I was out for 3 years or something, I was never arrested or anything. I found out I was being, investigated. So I lawyered up immediately. So they came and talked to me, and then they talked to my co-defendant, and honestly, that it just was in this holding place for a very long time. This is when I was obsessively watching you, Dan, on your channel. And it actually was really helpful to me because you had shows, you did shows about life after prison and that, you can get your life back, and here's some ideas and all this. And that really helped me because when I found out I was being investigated, I thought my life was over. I mean, there was about 48 hours I contemplated suicide just because I thought, literally, like, everything I've worked so hard for is gone. How am I going to tell my parents? Anyway, so but luckily that lasted 48 hours, and I spoke it out loud so that I could speak, talk to people and say this is where my crazy head is going right now, and reel myself back in. But anyway, I was so obsessed with this process of what was going to happen to me, and not knowing what was going to happen for my future, and what kind of sentence I was going to get and all this. So my son was upset because him and his wife had just had their first baby. And so, like, I went out to visit them, and all I did was talk to people on the phone about my situation, and try to contemplate what may be happening. And he was like, I couldn't be present when he needed me to be present outside of my situation. And so we were fighting for a while. Like, we fought for a good year. And it was, once I went in, it was actually right before I went in, he kind of rallied and was very loving and calling me a lot and letting me know that he was there for me. But I mean, it took a toll on our relationship because, like I said, I was a single parent, so it was just me and him. And, I think we're in a way better place now. I've done a show with him on there and allowed him to be very transparent about his feelings. So it was difficult, but I mean, it was just different because I was telling an adult, but it still had a horrible impact on him, you know, and
Sure, 'cause that's
I'm
his
sure it
son.
was
I mean, that's
embarrassing.
different. It's
You
not
know,
just
now
his
his
adult, it's
in-laws
your son.
know that his mom's in prison for a little while, and he's got to sort of explain that, and you know,
It's a process for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. So me and Angie did a show a little while ago about women getting raped in prison, specifically Dublin, and I showed all the news clips from KTVU Channel 2 out of Oakland. And now I understand they're closing it. Angie, they're going to make it a men's prison. But we came up with the idea that maybe the guards should wear body cams. Then and they can't turn them off. If they do, they're fired, you know, or the battery goes low. They don't start their shift till it's fully charged. And would this even work? And how could we pass legislation? And I want to know your guys' opinion on that, and then maybe your final words, because I know it's been an hour, guys. I want to thank you for your time. But let's go back to Dan. What do you think about body cams? Your final words to the world.
I think it's an idea, but I think the Freedom Act is going to prevent it because there's many portions of the prison that cameras are not allowed to go. Privacy, you know, bathroom stalls, parts of the dorms, especially in a women's prison. I mean, let's be honest, we're dealing with correctional officers, nothing against them, but human beings just like anybody else. And footage of the inside of a female's prison could be worth quite a bit of money. You already have staff bringing in, introducing contraband, cell phones, other things like this. Women's prisons are big on bringing in things like lipstick and perfume to women. I think
we get cell phones too, Dan.
I know, but I mean, a lot of the extortion that I've seen from women that were locked up for a while, there's no such thing as consent in there. So even if a woman is engaging in sexual activity with a male correctional or anybody within the staff, they're not allowed to do that. So there's no consent. But there's women that are giving consent for lipstick and things like this.
Yes.
Can you imagine if you get a CEO that's like, hey, we're going to start an OnlyFans and we're going to take secret footage and start releasing it? I see it as a bigger problem than a solution. The problem is that we shouldn't have men in women's prison, or very, very limited men in women's prison.
Like that.
That's why they shut down Coleman Camp. Coleman Camp is now a men's camp, federal Coleman, Florida. So it's whether we want it to happen or not, it's never going to happen. You can that's my final words. It won't happen.
Okay, and Dan, final words.
My final words.
Yeah.
Final words put on the spot, guys. If you're going through a stressful moment in your life, one of our biggest roadblocks in life is I don't need anybody else's help to solve my own problems. This is not the time to sit in the dark and think you're going to figure this out, or you're going to find a magic bullet, or an attorney is going to get you out of this. If you're in trouble, one of the best things you can do is pick up the phone, click on it for a free consultation. It doesn't cost you anything. And the worst case scenario is you're going to walk away with some free information that might navigate and change the dynamic of everything, from how much time you're going to serve, no longer wanting to kill yourself. So reach out for some help, whether it's me, another consultant, Sean, or any one of these beautiful souls in the room right now. That's all I got.
Thank you, Dan. And so Audrey, about the body cam for the guards, and then maybe I should have just asked you the body cam question, then we go around and do final. Dan, I'll give you a second final round. Final goodbye.
Get prepared this time.
Yeah. So Audrey, let's talk about the body cam for the correctional officers, COs. They don't like to be called guards, but we don't like to be called a lot of things either. So I'm going to call them guards.
I get what Dan was saying about this would be something that would maybe be exploited. But I personally, I don't think body cams will ever happen, although I'm a big fan of it. And I think that's for accountability purposes. I would hope they would have audio and video, because some of the things that are said to us as women in prison is just disgusting. I mean, beyond any realm of, you know. And I think that there should be like it should be on a closed system, you know, and I think that it should all footage should be held for at least like 60 days or 90 days. And if there's any inquiries or complaints made, then that block of time footage, you know, be sent to regional and central and you know, the appropriate, you know, outside the institution facilities. But having said that, I can say, as a woman who did time in women's prison, the COs, you know, we have, you know, at the camp we had, you know, bathroom stalls with doors. You know, the COs weren't seeing my whatnots and my how you doing unless they were doing a strip search. And I think that that the idea of all female officers is great in theory. I like it. I'm for it. You know what I mean? I think it would make the prison run a little better because everyone can do strip searches now. And it would definitely remove a lot of the crap between inmates and guards. But at the same token, when I was at Outersen, we were incredibly understaffed, and the majority of our staff were men. So if they were to say only women could work at this facility, we would be on a 24/7 lockdown due to staffing issues. And for inmates, that would mean no programming, no going to commissary. It would really hinder any personal growth or even being able to acquire FSA eligibility possibly for a lot of the inmates. So I don't agree with the female staff only situation. But I do agree with that body cams would be great, but I don't think that it'll ever really happen. Now in my unit, right before I left, they actually installed cameras at the horseshoe, the entrance area, so to speak, of each housing unit. And these cameras could see in the hallways, and we weren't supposed to get changed in our cubes. Of course we did, but you're not supposed to. But basically in just common areas, where there would be nothing inappropriate for a man to see or whatever. And I don't know if they ever actually activated the cameras. There's a lot of inmate.com about, are these just set up to scare us? Or are they real? But I think that the idea of having cameras in common areas for security purposes, particularly for the inmates, is 100% something I'm a fan of. So that's my take on that. I'm pro body camera. I don't think it's feasible, but I do think common area cameras are feasible, and I do think they should be implemented.
Thank you. I just want to add real quick. There's a new thing going on in San Francisco with the police department as far as strip searching women. So now they talk into their body camera and they say, I'm now identifying myself as a female while I search this person because of the pronouns and all this, these laws in the past. And then they now I am now identifying myself as a male police officer now that I'm done with my search, and it's on record, and they search the women. This is what our world has become, guys. So just want to throw that in there. And Raymond, what do you think about if the guards wore body cameras in African prisons?
Well, no, we haven't started using such a technology in our prison. So I cannot speak to that because we do not have anything of such. There's nothing like camera in our prison at all. Absolutely no camera.
Do you think it would be beneficial? It would create a safety net, perhaps, against inmate abuses?
Of rape in the prisons, yes, we also experience some sort of thing, because I remember somewhere in 2011 there was a case. Whereas a woman who was an inmate was found pregnant. And how did that happen? She didn't go to prison pregnant. How did she get pregnant? So yes, it's true that women actually get raped in prison and even in our prison.
Wow. And Angie, how about you?
Well, I'm just all for some kind of higher security as far as protecting the inmates, because, like Audrey mentioned, it's not just sexual abuse and things like that, but I mean, they call us bitches, and I mean, they talk to us in a way that's so unprofessional that to me is like, I can't talk that way at my job. You guys can't talk that way in your places of employment. Why do they get away with it? Because there's no accountability. And I think that there needs to be something that creates that kind of accountability. You can't be talking to people that way. That's crazy. If you can't handle the inmates because they make you so mad that you want to call them whores and bitches, then this just isn't a job for you. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't work at a drive-through and tell all the customers that they smell like shit or something. You know what I mean? Like, you have to behave in a certain way when, it's, if you can't be in the public, you can't be in the public. Anyway, so I have a strong feeling of they've got to be held accountable. I wish that body cams could work. I think you guys brought up some excellent points about ways that they cannot work. But I think there needs to be some kind of a solution that's better than what we have now. That's for sure.
The feds are very protective about their properties and letting camera, even the press and the journalists in there. aren't they, Dan? I mean, it's hard to find any footage of the
Yeah,
inside.
that's kind of why, like, when we see a lot of these court TV cases where the courts are in the courtrooms, and then you'll hear about some of these white collar stuff where the cameras are not in there. It's not because they're trying to hush it. It's the cameras are not allowed in federal courtrooms. So any court TV you ever seen is always going to be state type of cases.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and the feds, you know, one of the problems is I'm all for it. I think the idea of body cams has a very good level of a tone of accountability, but I work with a couple of local colleges, one still out of Florida and one we're setting up here, where a lot of the COs, they have to go through accredited courses before they can start their job as a CO. So we work with a course called Bridging the Gap, and you know, I was in prison, and it wasn't the same type of issues that women deal with, but there is a similarity where COs are walking down the hall and they're saying things slick out of their mouth. But on the flip side, there's plenty of inmates that, you know, while COs are doing their count time, you got inmates burping as soon as they walk by, you got inmates farting when they walk by, you know, really kind of going out of their way to press buttons. Now, accountability this is a CO's job. They should be trained for this. They should understand this. The inmate is there, and you know, the inmate is expected in some cases to be kind of a numbnuts to do these childish things where that shouldn't be expected out of a CO who's your life is in their hands to a certain extent. So I don't think the proper level of training on, it's just like how they talk about, you know, defunding police. Defunding police isn't the answer, but it is the answer to train them better and have them working maybe with individuals in care that can identify these situations where there's a level of almost therapy where some of these COs aren't prepared. They're trained almost that it's us against the inmates or against staff. That's even Sean, with what you said, I mean, because I love you, I got to correct you. You know, if you're talking to people that are getting ready to go into prison, and when you say things like they want to be called, they don't want to be called COs, they want to be called correction officers, or you know, by you saying, well, they call us inmates, I'm going to call them COs. That's part of the headbutting mentality where I'm sure everyone in this room has had at least one conversation with an educated correctional officer who wasn't there to make your life a living hell. And to get that momentum going more and more, it's like I tell my daughter who lives in New York City, who's all about F the police. And not all police are bad. So I'm like, when you see a good officer doing something, go up and say, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. Because that little bit of kindness, when they think they go unnoticed, that could be the difference in what gets them to hold another CO accountable. So creating the level of positivity, and it's never going to be perfect, you know, COs and inmates alike, you're always going to have nitwits on both sides. But everybody in this room, we've been on both sides, or not both sides, but we're now trying to help those going in and help those come out. And a lot of people that are getting ready to go into the prison system are already of the mindset of, I don't deserve this. They're already going in with a chip on their shoulder. So I think it's our responsibility with this power that we've been given, with this voice that we have on Sean's channel right now, to let people know that you're going to have a lot of shitty days in there. And when a CO says something sideways out of their mouth, when you decide to buck up and say something back, just remember you're on their turf, you're in their house, and it's going to be your good time that's taken away. It's going to be your RDAP that's taken away. It's going to be your halfway house that's taken away. Or mind your own effing business and realize that the negative shit they're giving you, unless they're putting their hands on you, putting your life in danger, like a lot of women that were, you know, forced upon, you've got to pick and choose your battles, or else you're going to make your prison sentence and your time a lot tougher to do.
Yeah. Dan, I want to thank you for calling me on my shit, because you're right, Dan. I still got to take accountability for things, because there were some correctional officers, staff members that really went out of their way to help me. I got a certificate on my wall for ServSafe certified, which they did not have to do. I'd finished the class. I was going home in like 2 months. So one particular officer went out of his way to make sure I got the certificate, which if I was going to get it on the outside, is $2,000 or $3,000, right? It's still good for another year. There was another one who printed up flyers for me so I could start this AA meeting and the warden worked with me, and the associated warden, because there was no AA meetings. It hadn't been there in 10 years. So they let me have a space, a time, and a slot, and put up flyers, and they help me, and that really, to have that support group. I'm still talking to some of those guys today. I see them face to face. I work with 2 of them now. There's 5 people I work with. 5 people I work with now that I did time together, and a lot of these correctional officers did favors for me, or things they didn't have to do. So they're not all bad people. I have a police officer I'm working with now. We talk quite a lot. He's got a case. He's been indicted, and he's asking me for advice. And the last time, I remember I told him the last time, I said, wait a minute, a police officer is asking a felon for advice? And we both laughed. I mean, but
I just want to ask if you guys, if anybody in here has ever seen Anthony Ganji on Tier Talk.
Yeah, there you go. He's a good guy.
I just dropped his link in the live chat. He's no longer a correctional officer. He's more of like in management staff, but he runs a channel about kind of helping correctional officers be better correctional officers. And when I came home from prison, I started reaching out to him he was very apprehensive about talking at first, because inmates versus, staff. And since we've become friends a little bit, we've been able to kind of, again, bridge the gap a little bit. And he's been able to take some of my side. I've been able to take some of his side and kind of blend it together. But he's a great resource for you guys, because he's trying to make a difference in the prison system where COs are walking that line without being too friendly, but without being a dick at the same time. Like, there's a way that COs can do what they need to do without using abusive levels of power. So if we bring awareness to that, I do think this change is going to be slow for sure, but we've got to start somewhere, and it's holding accountability amongst our own people that are in prison, our friends and our family that go in there, making sure that they understand that if something bad happened to them from a CO, not every time it was their fault, but there are a lot of times when it's like, what did you say in response, or what role did you play? We're not talking about rape or sexual advancements. For women, it's a little bit different. And I think Fed Phoenix, you said it, where it's impossible to have an all women correction office just because understaffed. But if you start doing better training, you start offering better pay, you give women more of a reason to want to take that job. If everything is enhanced, I do believe that there would be more female correctional officers, to where instead of it being maybe a 50-50 to men to female correctional officers, maybe it would be a 25-75, where 75% are female. If you start to overpopulate the women correctional officers, where there's less and less males in there, at the very least, it's going to minimize the amount of casualties that happen. If you guys remember Alderson Women's Prison, the Captain Grimes, I was a big part in bringing him down. When women started reaching out to me, we started doing news stories, and the news story started getting picked up by the press, and the press started investigating it. Before you know, he got sentenced to 120 months. So there is accountability, but it doesn't come from kicking and screaming. It comes from pen and paper.
And although generally, and Dan, I have a lot of respect for you. You're definitely an OG in the prison genre YouTube channel scene. And so I think, I know you know what you're talking about, and I generally agree with you. However, a couple of things you said I don't particularly.
I'm just kidding.
That's right, because I care. But you said you mentioned the guards acting like jackasses, and then you got inmates who act like jackasses. But here's the thing: inmates are a vulnerable community when it comes to their relationship with those who work to supervise and control and monitor them and all that. Much like people in a nursing home. Certainly when our warden put us on cube restriction for a week and with bag meals only, and we couldn't shower but every 3 days for 6 minutes, I definitely felt as helpless as I would imagine an elderly person in a nursing home does over the outcome in their life and their day-to-day, and moment-to-moment situations. And with that in mind, I feel like there must be a much higher standard of accountability for those who are in a position that are charged with the responsibility of taking the responsibility of supervising vulnerable parties. I think if you work in a nursing home or a daycare or a prison, you have to be held to a much higher standard of accountability by your employer, but also by society as a collective. And I don't, if the old man in room 3 throws a cup of piss at you, you don't get to go punch him in the face, and you don't get to withhold his meds, and I think with that in mind, I think if inmate, in cell number 5, decides to fart when you pass, or, make a comment about, your mama, I don't think you're entitled to react to that the same way you would if someone in Walmart made that comment to you or treated you that way, because you're working with a vulnerable party, and there needs to be a higher level of accountability for your actions, because you have chosen a line of work where you've taken on a responsibility for persons that are not on an even playing field with you.
I completely agree with you, but it goes back to what you said a few minutes ago also, where we're talking about how they're understaffed, they're undertrained. Yes. So the reality is, though, is all these problems that we are talking about, the reality is these are actual problems that are happening.
Right.
Perfect example. I was in RDAP, in the RDAP unit, and there's plenty of COs that look at the RDAP unit as just a bunch of snitches. They hate getting time off. They look at us as soft. They look at us as like, oh, these guys. I got moved from in Coleman at the low. I was in A unit when I started, which is, A, B, and C. We had A unit, B unit, C unit. And when they moved to RDAP, they changed it from A1 to C2. I think it was C2 where RDAP was. Well, I had got used to the midnight count time, because you can't, during count time, I would never go to the bathroom until after count time in the middle of the night.
Me too.
I was caught in the bathroom during count time and get in trouble. Well, I was used to being in the A unit where count time every night was at midnight, almost verbatim. So when I would wake up at 12:30, 12:45, I knew count time was over. I'd go to the bathroom.
Right.
When I moved to C unit, within my first week, I got up to use the bathroom. It was like almost 1 a.m. I'm thinking count time is at 12 o'clock. I'm not thinking that they go unit to unit to unit. So while I'm in the bathroom, I walk out and there's a fucking CO with a flashlight screaming, "You're out of fucking bounds, inmate." And then he started whispering in my ear, "I'm going to get you to lose your RDAP, pussy. You're going to lose your fucking RDAP, faggot."
Yeah.
Saying these horrible things to me, and man, did the blood boil in my skin. And I'm looking at this little guy in front of me, and all I wanted to do is grab his head and pop it off. And I see another CO behind him look at me. He mouthed, "It's not worth it." He didn't say it out loud. He goes, "It's not worth it." So I bit my tongue and went back to my unit. And that CO came over to me and said, "Look, some of us are like that. This guy hates everybody in the unit. I don't know why." I had to make a cognitive decision to realize that he was completely out of line.
Right.
In my mind, I would have felt justified smacking his face. But the reality, I would have lost my RDAP. I would have went to the SHU. I would have lost my good time. So remembering the consequences of the actions, saying it's fair. Should the COs be doing this? Of course not. But until accountability is there and training is in place, and we're talking a clear amount of time is going to happen, we're not justifying their actions, but we're putting more pressure and more responsibility on us as inmates to say, hey, I want to get home to my family as soon as possible. And if that means sucking the metaphorical, while I'm in prison to do that, to get in and out, then albeit, Now, as a female, if you're sexually being assaulted or sexually being preyed upon, that's a whole different level of like Priya needs to get involved. You need to, you don't just need to mouth it off at that point. You need to document what happens. You need to reach out to the right people, or else it's going to fall on deaf ears. And for Captain Grimes to get in trouble, how many complaints probably needed to be filed over the years prior to that for him because he thought he was untouchable. I thought
it was hundreds. Like I remember reading about it before I went in.
And it was over the course of years. So, the solution might start today, but we're not going to see the yield of that solution. It's like bamboo. Everybody thinks bamboo grows like the speed of fucking light because it shoots up out of the sky. But what people don't know is when you plant a bamboo seed, it could take 18 months to 24 months before it sprouts its first little seedling. So planting the seeds right now and getting people in the right mindset to realize that this is a game of chess and you are not in control of this game. You are literally a pawn. The minute you get the COs any kind of inkling that they can crawl into your skin, guess what? Every time they want to go press somebody's button, it's going to be your button they're going to push. Once you've given them the awareness that fucking sticks and stones will break my bones, words are never going to hurt me, they're going to move on to the next person that's going to be a weak-minded individual that is going to give in to them, is going to fart when they walk by, that is going to burp on them when they walk by, is going to obscenities throughout the hallway. And that's not the type of inmate that I want to be, and that's not the type of inmate I want my clients to be. We all
I'm definitely not condoning as an inmate to just show your butt because you can. Absolutely not. And I certainly believe in personal accountability, probably more than most people. But my point was simply, it's not the level of administrative accountability for inmates and how they deal with COs versus COs and how they deal with inmates. COs should be held to a particularly higher standard, I believe, of accountability.
I think we agree 100%. It's Most COs, unfortunately, are individuals that couldn't cut the mustard as police officers, and I'm not talking bad about it. It's an honest to truth. I work with them in the colleges that they're in, and many of these guys wanted to be police. They just didn't have the capacity or the proper grades or the proper schooling. But to be a CO, there's less requirements, and less requirements is going to give you a lesser level of intelligence, as sad as that sounds.
A lot of the COs at Outerstem would come to work in jeans, wearing hoodies, thin blue line, and we're in this together, it'd be like police, military corrections. And they really had this mind state that they were literally the police of the prison, which is because delirious at best. Which they are in a sense, but you know what I mean? But they really kind of, you're not driving into a bad neighborhood, breaking up a domestic at 3 a.m. on the 4th of July here. You know what I mean?
When you're in 5th grade and some kid gets to be a patrol with his orange belt on, you somebody has a level of authority that probably hasn't had that, and definitely wasn't trained on how to respect that authority. So it's giving a child a gun and expecting them to listen to the rules. It's just our expectations shouldn't be so high until we see something different happening within the system.
Right. I agree.
Sorry, Sean. I didn't mean to ramble on that long.
No, this is great stuff. I love this. I'll probably watch this show over, and I don't usually watch my shows.
One thing I want to talk about that's been a unique experience is that I assumed when I was in that when I got out that all probation officers were going to be just as bad as the COs as far as the way they treat us and the way they talk to us and look down on us. And I was shocked. All 3 probation officers I've had in the last, I don't know, what is it, 8 months or something, have been extremely respectful, really above board about everything. And I don't know if I was just lucky or if this is what it is. And I've talked to a lot of people that said that that's also been their experience. And when I actually asked my probation officer, I said, I expected you to be an asshole like the COs and everything. And I go, but you're so respectful. And he goes, that's a huge part of our training is he said, you guys have already been sentenced and you've already done your time. We're here now to make you successful and make sure you're, doing what you're supposed to do, but also to help you be successful. And he said, we are like strictly forbidden to be disrespectful. And he even made the joke that a lot of people on probation have their attorneys on speed dial and they pay attention to that because they could be in trouble for crossing the line professionally as far as just being verbally abusive or anything. I don't know if that's been other people's experience, but that's one thing I want to share is that's been a really positive experience for me. So, and I noticed Katie's comment that, I don't want to go to prison, because she's still in that beginning stage. And Katie, I want you to know that every one of us on here understands where you're at. And I know you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel right now, but it's there. And as Audrey said, the day that you walk into prison, for me, I shared Audrey's experience where I said, this is a day of celebration because it's the first day to the beginning of the end. And the day you walk in, you're going, as scary as that can be, and daunting, know that is the beginning of the end. And that's when you'll start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So just hang in there, because we've all been there. We know exactly how you're feeling.
Yeah. And I was like you, Ange, my pre-sentence PO
real quick. My probation officer that I used to have is coming on my channel next month. She just got permission from her supervisor. She's going to answer all your questions live. That's how good I got along with my probation officer.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I will say my pre-sentence PO.
What's that?
Raymond?
Yes, I said I have a long way to drive from where I am. I'm still at work and I need to leave because of the traffic.
Yeah, he's 6 hours ahead of us too, guys.
It was nice meeting you.
Raymond, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Cheers,
thanks
Raymond.
for your good work too.
Stay free.
I got Big Weeby in the house. He was going to come on the show. Big Weeby, I'll give you the link real quick. It's way at the top if you want, but if you want to come in and say hi real quick, he's got a channel too, guys. Let's see if it comes in there.
Yeah, my experience was a lot like Ange's with probation. My pre-sentence PO was really wonderful.
Thank you, Raymond.
I beg to leave. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Raymond. the PO who did my PSI was cool, and my post incarceration PO is really laid back and cool too. So, but I really don't do anything for them to really have to, like you, Ange, for them to really worry about reprimanding or really looking over my shoulder a whole lot. But I definitely have had very good experience with probation as well.
That's great. What about you, Dan? How was your experience?
I concur. My probation officer's name is Chris Hansen out of Spokane District, and he was so he was very by the book. He said, as long as you do what you're supposed to do, I'll do what I'm supposed to do. And before I started going on YouTube and doing any of that, I got his permission. He just made it very clear that if anything happens, I want to hear it from you and not hear it somewhere else first. And I get along with him so well that he actually got me into the probation department after I finished my time, to where I was getting paid to go speak to pretrial individuals that were getting ready to go in. And he got me set up with the federal defender's office, to where they actually hire me for, they bring me on as an expert to help with some of this information on character witness, things of that nature. And I get paid thanks to him. He's gone to my speeches. He's, to this day, we text back and forth. It's definitely gone from professional relationship to, kind of shooting the shit like you would with a friend. But probation officers are, I don't know if it's a number system or whatever, but if you're a high profile criminal that is a violent level of criminal, you are going to have a different level of supervision, and your interaction is going to be different. But with most of the people in this room, they look at your PSI, they look at your prison history, they look at whether you got shots or not. They kind of have a bird's eye view of what level of care they need to put on you. So it's, I think somebody like Katie, prison for me and for a lot of others, if you really look back at our time, it was an overwhelmingly positive experience. I know we created some vision for you in here today of like how shitty the inmates can be, but how shitty the staff can be. But I promise you that there's a lot more good days in prison, and everybody here can contest too.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
After we eat now, we're all sitting in each other's units and we're having some of the best conversation we've ever had. You're in bed, you wake up, you repeat, days fly by. You're filled with activities. You're not going into the midst of COVID where you're going to be on pure lockdown where there's nothing to do. The real prison sentence for Katie is what you're going through right now.
Yes. Way worse right now. He's right.
Yeah. So you're not going to have this abundance of if staff interacts with you poorly and you don't engage and don't give them anything, and you're not giving them a reason to engage with you, they'll move on to somebody else. So my girlfriend, Coleman, and she told me all the same stories I heard from a lot of ladies in here where staff would do this and staff would do that. She didn't give them the time of day. She also wasn't rude to them, and they literally would go look for the individuals that would give them the time of day. So if you go in there with the right attitude, other women like Holly Coleman, I love Holly Coleman, but if you don't want to go into prison and find all the things that are wrong with the prison and start blogging from it while you're there, because they're going to fucking wreck your life, they're going to put you in the shoe, they're going to have issues, just kind of, you got to pay attention to your audience in every situation. And when you're in prison, your audience is, how do you stay below the radar and do what you got to do to get in and out of there. The worst of it is by far what you're going through, of the level of the unknown.
Also, Katie, you will find
one of my most memorable days, guys. Like, I got all you guys together today. I did an open mic outside, and I probably had 15 people show up. Bands, guys were juggling, telling jokes, bands, and I got to put up flyers a week ahead. All the staff members worked with me. They gave us all the equipment. We made a big stage outside, and we could see the road 50 yards away. Cars were stopping and looking at us, and the whole camp was just I think it lasted 4 hours, and it was like the best day I've ever had to get all these people together. No card. Mexicans, black, all kinds of music and everything. And it was like, I put all this together, and it was like I got now. It's like, I'll never forget that day. It was like one of the best days in prison. There's so many days in prison that I'll never forget that were just memorable, like a yearbook, a Kodak moment. Okay. And you'll have those. Thank you.
Yeah. I have memories of sitting with some of my friends, where we'd be laughing so hard, that kind of laugh where you're laughing so hard that your back hurts and you're like, stop. I can't laugh anymore. It hurts. You'll have days like that. You'll have days that are really, really, really good. And you'll have a lot of those days. So just know that, like Dan said, what you're going through right now, Katie, is far worse than anything you're going to go through when you walk through those doors.
Pre-trial is the hardest, right, guys?
Oh, yeah.
And people used to tell me, Sorry, people used to tell me, Dan, you're so lucky. You got pretrial. You were out this entire time, where a lot of guys are remanded immediately sitting in county. I'll tell you, though, obviously I didn't want to say I wish I was in jail that whole time, but going from my couch to Coleman Federal Prison was still going from comfort to extreme. Individuals that are sitting in like county jail for months and months waiting, when they get to a prison, it's like showing up at like, a 5-star hotel. You got daylight, you got a track, you got TV. You're not going to be in there, especially somebody like you, Katie, assuming that you're going to be going to some sort of a camp. You're not going to be in there with violent individuals. The biggest thing that people argue about is, stay away from the TV room. Don't try to gauge to be on the TV. But there's going to be, a lot of the women have told me it's just like real life. A lot of women will get in there and bicker, where men get in there and just they want to kind of puff up their chest and play the whole ego game. But if you can drop your ego at the door and go in there and realize that you don't give a fuck about controlling the TV or any of this stuff, or who's in charge and who's girlfriend and who's doing this. You just kind of get in there, stay in your lane, and you're going to find people that you gravitate to that are just like you. You guys are going to walk the track together. You're going to wake up together. You're going to get jobs together. You're going to eat together. You're going to make nachos together. You're going to show pictures of your kids and talk about life on the outside. And before you know it, there I am. Got to get in the Sean changed my image on me. He's got me moving.
No, I didn't do that. It just went from 4 to 3. She'll be back.
Yeah, but some of the times I have individuals that want to work with me when I get out. Their jaded experience of they think they need to be a freedom fighter for prison reform. And yes, prison reform is a real thing. It really needs to happen. But I also know my level of fear going into this was so fucking unreal and so unrealistic, because everything that I knew about prison was what I saw on TV, Locked Up Abroad or the TV show Oz. I'm like, oh my God, I've got this white collar crime with a 5K1. I'm definitely getting beaten up. I'm definitely getting raped. I'm like, all these horrible thoughts went through my mind. And when I got there, because I was supposed to go to a camp, I didn't know that I had a manager variable detainer on me for an open state case, which was supposed to be closed, but it wasn't. So when I got there, guys came up to me and they're like, hey, what's your name? Where are you from? And I'm like, Dan, Florida. Da, da, da. Like, what'd you do? And I'm like, what'd I do? Everything I've seen on TV, you don't talk about your crime. So I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. So white guy walks off. Another guy comes up to me and goes, hey, who are you? What's your name? Where are you from? What'd you do? I'm like, man, I don't want to talk about it. So this happened like 3 or 4 times. And I'm like scratching my head. I'm like, why does everybody want to know what I did? So finally, the same guy comes back up to me and he goes, hey, man, I'm only going to ask you one time. You F with little kids? I was like, what? What are you talking about? He goes, you don't look like a gangbanger. You don't look like a drug dealer. You look like a white collar guy, but you're at a low, not a camp. And you don't want to talk about your crime. I'm like, and then I think I said, everything I've seen on TV, you're not supposed to talk about it. So they made me go. I had to go get my J&C, my judgment and committal, to show what my actual charge was. And once they saw that I was, normal dude, they thought it was funny, because they said, you're not the only one that has that thought, and the fears and the irrational thought process of what we're going through, because it's months and months, and it's part of the game that the feds play. It's the system of torture, of making you wait. You originally get charged, you're looking at sometimes decades of time when you look at your original charges, and then it works down to a plea deal, and then you're working at acceptance, responsibility, a possible 5K1, possible Rule 35. Maybe you've got a minimum mandatory, and you're looking at safety valve that can, things that you're just not well versed in. Before you know it, your life sentence turns into 24 months, 36 months, which still sounds like a lot of time. But when you get to prison, and you've got this relatively normal short sentence, and you meet people that have already been down 10 or 15 years, and they're making jokes and going, Katie, when you get out of here, you're still going to be shitting McDonald's. Like, the reality hits pretty quick, and the fear leaves your mind, and you engage in your new everyday routine, which is not that bad. You're going to be writing letters, phone calls. The communication that you think you're going to lose with your loved ones almost intensifies, because now your communication becomes important. That 15-minute phone call is valuable to you. That letter you get in the mail is now valuable. Where right now your kid could be sitting right next to you, and you don't talk to him for 4 days because everybody's focused on their phones. This will invoke a different level of spirituality amongst everybody that goes through it, that chooses to focus on the positives and kind of hush the negatives, and realize that we can all find the shit that's going wrong. It's sometimes really hard to find the positives in what we're going through. So if you believe in God or not, I promise you, whatever extra you believe in, you will never be given something that you can't handle. You just have to process it and digest it and get your head out of the sand and realize that it's one day at a time.
Thank you, Dan. I want to co-tell on what Dan said, because if you're watching this and you're on pretrial, chances are you're going to a low or a camp. I've only met one guy who had to go to a medium to turn himself in, and they couldn't even believe it when he got there, that he self-surrendered to a medium. But 95%, 98% chance you're going to get to self-surrender to a camp or a low. And when you get there, if you think you're going to go through prison alone and I'm not going to make any friends, I'm just going to do my time and get out of there, that attitude right there, that needs to change. You're going to be living with hundreds of people. To not make a friend, you almost got to work really hard to make that happen. I mean, and if you're going to be the Lone Ranger, like I tell people, even the Lone Ranger had Tano. You're not that special if you think you're going to do this alone and get through it, and I don't want to make any friends. That attitude right there is probably what got you in prison. You need to look at that, okay? And now you got the time to look at that while you're in there. And trust me, there was a guy in front of me in line. His name was Chris. I won't say his last name. He's been on my show, and he was telling me, I was talking to him, and he goes, I'm not here to make any friends. I'm not going to make friends with anybody. I knew right then he was going to be one of my closest friends, and today he is, and we talk all the time. I almost laughed. I remind him of that all the time because he had that attitude, and I watched him evolve, and he started to make friends. You're going to make, or do you want to make enemies? Okay, go, have that attitude. Go through prison and not make any friends because you're probably going to make enemies. And when you get out of there, you're going to wish you did make friends. It's going to be the roughest time if you're going to try to do this alone. Don't do it alone. Just find the right people, and you know who they are. You go to the law library, go to religious services, go to the gyms. You'll find the right people. You know who they are, or you know who the bad guys are, and you find those right people, and you'll get to know them. And then you'll get out and you'll have a YouTube channel, and I'll be on your show. Thanks. Uh-oh.
No, we're here. We're just all quiet.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. These are being a consultant and doing this stuff. You know, everyone says, Dan, how come you haven't made videos in a while? It honestly is mentally taxing to be completely truthful. You know, every time when I spend the time on a call with somebody going through this, like Katie, I relive part of what you're going through because I immediately get brought back to those. As much as I can tell you, oh, it's no big deal. Right now, it's a huge deal to you. So I have to relate to that. Like when I talk to people that have short sentences, you know, I only got 6 months. Part of me wants to go, oh, 6 months isn't crap. But when I used to tell people I got 42 months, I would meet people that had done 30 years. Like look at Michael Santos. He did 30 something years in prison. It's all relative to our situation, and whatever somebody's going through in this moment, to them, it's very real, it's very extreme, and it's filled with fear and anxiety and sleepless nights. The only way you get through it is by finding the necessary steps to mitigate these steps. With our clients, we send all of our clients, it looks like a miniature notebook, like a golf pad. If you play mini golf, you get that little mini notebook, and it's got today's date on the front, on the page you're looking at. So it'd have today's date with a bunch of check mark boxes next to it. And on the back side of the golf pad, it's got 5 positive actions. Maybe it's call a friend, do some push-ups, whatever it might be. Every time you have a negative thought on today's date, whatever, to June 19th, you make a tick mark. You make a tick mark. And when you make that tick mark, it creates a positive thought to go do a positive action. And what happens is when you now flip through 30 days later and you look at how many tick marks you had today versus how many negative thoughts you have 30 days later, you start to control the wave of negativity entering your brain, and you definitely control how long you give it space for. You evict the negative thoughts immediately, and it forces you to go do something positive. And with our clients, we get them to start by making your bed in the morning, putting your dirty dishes away before you go to bed, because a shitty experience of what you guys are going through right now is only intensified when you wake up to a messy house. And when you wake up to a messy house, you're already dealing with so much. Part of you wants you to shut the light off and lay there in bed and not talk to anybody. And that's only going to invoke more negativity. So when you start to take charge of just what's going on in your present day by doing things that are positive, like just being here on the show right now, it's great, Katie, that you're taking this information, but what you do with it tomorrow, when you find yourself in a negative thought process, you got to think about what we're talking about right now, because your situation's not going to go away. You still got to deal with it. So instead of turning on Netflix and, you know, drinking or whatever you're doing now, I'm not saying you're doing those things, but whatever you're doing to deal with it, it's got to be a level of positivity associated to it, or else this can be a very aging process for sure. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
That's why the
And
payment
Katie is doing some of those things. She's in recovery now. She's going to meetings. She's doing some of those things. But I know she needs it, especially you ladies. I hope she calls you or gets a hold of you, because she's got I don't want to talk about her case, but when you guys hear her, you're hard to go out to her. I know you.
Good for you, Katie, for taking the first step and getting help with addiction. Awesome to hear that.
Yeah, and I'll talk to you anytime, Katie. So just get my contact from Sean, and I'll make time for you anytime you need it.
Yeah, I'll call you after the show, Katie.
My contact info is in the live chat, so feel free.
Guys, it's been like 2 hours. Are you guys want to keep going? What do you think? Should we wrap it up?
I feel like I'm a hostage right now, Sean.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like, man, like the CEOs won't let me go pee. I feel like,
Yeah.
Geez, I'm doing the pee-pee dance.
Oh, but you got movement in the low, so what is it? Every 10 minutes? 10 minutes to the hour?
Yeah, every 10 minutes we within the unit we can go wherever we want, but every 10 minutes they open up. If you want to go from like your unit to the yard, or from yard to the chow hall, whatever, you got 10 minutes to get to place, top of every hour. Don't miss that move.
Oh, it's been great. Thanks for having me on.
Why don't we? Yeah, it's been a while. How about you guys all now? Final words, Dan, or we'll have ladies first, maybe. And
that's
Dan,
that's nice of you. Ladies first.
And which one is the lady? Who got out
first?
Thank
you, Ange.
Sweet. Yeah, mine's. I'll just say mine really quick, because mine's short and sweet. I mean, just rewatch this, listen to the things that help you connect and stay positive. There was a lot of people in the comments too that have been through the experience and also have put in some input, so make sure you read the comments. Just know that you're going to get through it. It's not going to be nearly as bad as how you feel it's going to be. It's going to be 100 times better probably than what you think it's going to be, and you'll get through it. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and life isn't over, so hang in there.
I would just say that first, thank you for having me on, Sean, and thank you, Ange and RDAP, for joining us. Ange and I actually got engaged the last time we did a show together, but that's something we'll discuss later.
She's trying to be with me and my husband, because I have a great husband who stood by me while I was in prison.
Well, and because Ange is amazing.
Wives or something? Is that what it's called? Sister wives?
Yeah. It's really Ange that pulled me in, but if you or a loved one are expecting to become incarcerated or may become incarcerated, I strongly recommend checking out my YouTube channel, Fed Phoenix, for information on what to expect, how to prep. There's a lot that goes into before you go to prison, to make your prison time as smooth as possible and your reentry as smooth as possible, and really to get the best outcome, at sentencing. And of course, RDAP Dan deals with that as well. But and then I have my backup channel, Fed Phoenix 2, which has about 9-10 videos that have been made since I've been home. Feel free to check those out. I hope that my channels can give people information and comfort and insights and make their journey easier. I hope that by sharing my journey, I can assist others in theirs. And so with that, check me out. And I'm real responsive to comments, and I'm here.
I'll send you guys all a copy of this. It'll be on your Google Drive on your Gmail, and then you can download and put it on your show if you like. Okay.
Thank you, Sean.
And the man who started all this, that's why I'm here today.
The OG.
Well, thank you guys for that. And like I said, we can all start what we want, but until people start walking in our steps, it doesn't matter, right? So you guys are here. So thank you, Sean, for inviting me once again. I know you've invited me several times, and sometimes my schedule just doesn't allow. But everybody that's going through this, Katie and all the other people out there, we all feel like this is only happening to us, or why me? We all reflect back to one of the craziest things I can ever imagine as a kid was, man, going to prison sounds like the worst thing in the world. And the thought of prison is the worst thing in the world. But the reality of prison for somebody that's going through a relatively nonviolent type of a situation, this is the prison sentence that you're going to be dealing with is the right here and the right now. not a lot of times with your family and stuff, there's a lot of unsaid things. You kind of walk around on tiptoes around each other. Your family doesn't know what to say to you. Your husband or your kids or mother, father, brother, sister, they might feel like she's already going through enough. I don't want to make anything worse for her. But you got to encourage the conversation with your friends and family. Ask me questions, guys. It's okay. I'm not going for a death sentence. I'm not dying of cancer. I'm going to disappear for a little while into a prison system, but our communication's still going to be here. So what questions do you guys have? It opens up the making it not so taboo. I have a client right now that does Tuesday night pizza night with his kids and his whole family, and they go and discuss what it's going to be like while he's gone, kind of normalizing the situation. And when you start doing that, it makes it feel not so surreal, because friends and family have the tendency to tell us, oh, you're not going to go to prison. The judge is going to see you're a really good person, and really good people like you don't go to prison. We want to believe that. And of course, there is the possibility, based on guidelines and whatnot, that a judge could downward depart and give a probated sentence. But staying realistic and doing everything you can do, prepping for the pre-sentence interview, what's going to go into your personal narratives, how you're dealing with your day-to-day, community involvement. We all talked about community service. Every single person going through this tries to do community service, and most people do the same type of community service. They go and hand out food, or they're helping the homeless, or they're picking up trash. If you're in a specific industry and you have the ability to go talk to youth about what you've done, actually talking about your case once you've pled guilty and it's now public knowledge, talking about what you've done to underprivileged children that might be going through a rough spot in life, saying, hey, this is what's happening to me. I'm now probably going to go to prison because of my choices. And taking that level of accountability, talking about it like a normal thing, it really opens up this level of, you get this chip off your shoulder, and you're going to start having people reach out to you, say, hey, I wish I would have heard this 10 years ago. I wish my father. You're going to get people that relate, and the side benefit to that is you might get letters given to you that you can now use at your sentencing. The judge can see that you're not just doing the basic community service that everybody else does. You're holding yourself accountable. You showed a level of vulnerability, and not only are you giving back to the community, but you might potentially stop somebody else from going through the same footsteps as you. So really having a plan of action, because your release is starting right now. Preparation to come back home shouldn't start 60 days before you get out of prison. Building the mindset of who you want to be and not being defined by your past choices and your past poor actions. You don't have to be that person. You can be the person you want to be, but realize it takes time to build new habits and in a new way of thinking. So, my phone number, I just posted it. It's in the live chat right there. Feel free to shoot me a call, shoot me a text. Just having a fun conversation for 5-10 minutes. At the very least, you feel better when you get off the phone.
I want to thank all you guys, and everything they said is true, guys. And let's say you do all these things they suggested, when you get to court on sentencing day, and you don't get any less of a sentence. Guess what? Everything you did to work to change yourself, that's what you get. Money can't buy that. You've worked to change yourself, and that's something money just can't buy. That's what you win. That's really what you win. Just remember that. Thank all you guys for coming on the show today. Appreciate all of you, everybody in the chat room, and I love you guys.
Peace.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. It was so good seeing your faces. Bye-bye.
Bye.